I'm going to take the liberty of informally changing the name of the symposium, because it's actually a celebration of the USGS project at GFDL, which, as you know, was staffed by both Krista and me. I honestly think we wouldn't be having this celebration today if it weren't for Krista. Her role has been huge. On one front, her organization skills, her coding, her computations, her memory, and I mean human brain memory, and not to mention her patience with this absent-minded scientist. They always kept the research moving forward. And yeah, we did iterate a little bit. Some things, you learn something, you have to go redo it, do it a different way. Not trying to make something work, but trying to make something more real. On the other front, it's been spoken by Tom, the global river networks have been essential parts of generations of GFDL models. And she's always made those river networks play nicely with the climate model overall. And, as maybe you can tell, aside from all of that, Krista's just a really nice person. Click. So this is my timeline. Click. I was born in 1956, son of George Milley and Georgia Bywaters. Here we are standing appropriately by Waters, Niagara Falls. We are Susan, Marianne, Deb, Mike, me in front with the suspenders, Carly in the stroller, and mother behind it. Where's Daddy? Daddy, as usual, is behind the camera. Click. The biggest single influence, though, on my path to hydrology was my big brother, Mike. He got me out of the house. He got me into the woods. He got me down to the stream. I was kind of a bookish, nerdy type. I mean, I still am, right? But, he showed me how to catch frogs, how to catch minnows, how to build rafts, how to build dams. This is the best part, building the dams and then simulating dam failures. You start a little thing and then it goes crazy. And, after that kind of fun, I honestly think I was destined to become a hydrologist. It gave me a connection to the real physical world where I could apply my sort of interests in mathematics and stuff. Next, click. Eventually I went to college, and the only influencer involved in how I chose that was the campus itself. I mean, it's beautiful. So go to the next click. In my junior year there, though, I met a visiting USGS scientist by the name of John Bredehoft. He was a groundwater hydrologist, just recently passed away. He was scouting for future USGS scientists, and I ended up working 2 summers with him in Reston, Virginia, the headquarters of the USGS. It's better at legging. Modeling regional groundwater flow. I recall John telling me to test my speculative hypotheses within the physical constraints of a numerical model. Those are my words. The way he put it was, don't think, Daddy-o, act. So, run the model. Next. When I graduated, I was drawn to graduate work at MIT, where I was intrigued by Pete Iggleson's rigorous physical, mathematical approach to water balance. Pete's approach also of simplicity and parsimony, those constrained by physics, appealed to me and really became an objective in much of my later work. I attribute a lot of that to him. Click. So how did I decide where to go next? Again, there wasn't any particular individual that influenced me. It was just mainly nostalgia for those happy college days that took me back to my alma mater. Long story short, though, I did not thrive in the high power research university environment. Some people do great in there, and it just wasn't for me. So let's click. When my tenure case reached Nassau Hall and the committee of 3, which is headed by the dean of the faculty, Aaron Lemonick, the physicist, it was rejected. They voted me down. Next. I later learned from John Phillip, who was one of the world's greatest soil physicists. He was at CSIRO in Australia, and he was at the time one of my heroes. I learned from him that he had written a not so flattering letter for me to the committee. And he explained to me, geez, I didn't realize the significance of that letter and what they were going to do with it. I'm sorry. Dubious. In any case, I think someone complained to him. I don't know. In any case, the decision put me out of my misery, and it was time to move on. It's one of the best things, one of the best failures in my life. Click. So before I go to the next influencers, I need to explain a little something for some people for background. This is a simple representation of the climate system, interacting land, atmosphere, ocean. I should have ice sheets on there. Click. Coincidentally, while my tenure case was being decided in Nassau Hall, over on the other side of Route 1, other side of Route 1 and down in Virginia, a couple of visionary science managers were hammering out a simple one-page agreement, try doing that these days, between USGS and NOAA, calling for collaborative research between their agencies. Click. The idea was that USGS could help GFDL, as you've heard much earlier, refine the land component of its climate model and investigate the nature of land's role in the climate system. So both building tools, but also using those tools to do science, to understand. Click. So those two visionaries were Jerry Mollman over at GFDL, who was then the director, and Marshall Moss, whom Bob Hirsch mentioned earlier. And I think I mentioned after Suki's talk that I had more than a little trepidation about working among the world's greatest, atmospheric, oceanic, and climate scientists. Click. And what made the difference? Well, it was a couple of individuals. First of all, Roger Wolf, who had, I don't have a picture of him, so he's a wolf, who had stayed in contact with me ever since my work with John Bredehoft. Roger was a nurturer. Roger was a grower. Roger was a longtime thinker who would try to bring people that he thought would be helpful to the USGS. He would try to bring them to the USGS. So he had cultivated me over the years, like at the AGU meetings and such. The other big influence was Suki. I mean, as I said before, what was crucial was his kindness when we met, his just buoyant optimism and encouragement. And it was those things that really sealed the deal and made me say, okay, I'll give this a try. So click. Anyway, this gig at GFDL was going to be a heavy lift, but Krista joined the project really early on, and as you've heard, made a huge difference. Click. Tom Delworth helped me find my way around the supercomputer when I first arrived. I remember him helping me read potential evaporation fields off the old magnetic tapes. But over the years, as I mentioned earlier, also, I really came to appreciate Tom's practical wisdom, and it was a big influence on me trying to think carefully about things, look before you leap. And I guess maybe that was some of Suki, I think, probably came through Tom also, because that was the kind of way that Suki was thinking too often. Click. Randall Coster. Randy, as he mentioned, was an early collaborator. He became one of my hydrologic heroes and a scientific role model and a friend. Well, not to mention one of my favorite authors of detective novels. Yeah, you can check him out on Amazon.com. See if you can figure out which review was written by one of the Millies. And click. Elena and Sergey, my closest partners in model development. I've spoken about how Elena often challenged me to go beyond my comfort zone, sometimes encouraging me to go too far, but you know, that's what you need, a pull in order to get to where you need to go, and then you can judge how far you should really go. Sergey never ever let me down when I needed help with anything, with theory, with computer code, with computer systems, and his dry wit was something that would often brighten the day. Next. Kenny Eng. Kenny spoke earlier. He let me tag along as he developed statistical methods for characterization of stream flow. And by doing so, he helped me maintain the impression back at headquarters in Virginia that I was doing something practical off there at that NOAA lab somewhere in New Jersey. Click. And here are some of the co-authors of Stationarity is Dead. Ron Stauffer's the only one, I guess, that wasn't on the program today. Dennis Lettenmeyer, powerhouse of hydrologic modeling. Bob, as I mentioned earlier, I think, chief hydrologist, the best one I ever knew, always taking an interest in the troops, the people that were working within the water division of the USGS. Julio, superb scientist and strategic thinker about science. And Ron was really another font of wisdom for me and occasional counselor and advocate in the IPCC process, helping to get some of our results highlighted. Click. And I just, you know, I can't go into detail on all this, but, you know, just these are more scientists who generously, as I said before, brought me along on their papers, on their coattails. Alexis Berg, you heard from him, Sarah Kapnick, Nate Cheney. Did I skip Kirsten? And click. Eugene. Eugene, as I said, made a reality of my longtime wish to put human water use into the climate models and see what it does to climate. So at this juncture, I want to share with you that I passed through some really dark times over those years, and some of these folks here and some others at the lab helped me keep going through my depression. Whether they realized it or not. Some knew about it, some didn't, but they were all helping me. Click. The biggest influencer on that front was my partner, Sarah. And she really deserves much credit for the fact that some of my later works exist. Thanks, Sarah. Click. And here's the last of my influencers to date. He took charge of USGS water mission area a few years ago, so he's an associate director of USGS, and initiated a years-long reorganization that led eventually to my resignation. Click. This is, I downloaded this morning, this mission statement of the USGS. Well, we conduct research to have the understanding to enhance preparedness, response, and resilience. Research, understanding. In brief, I left the USGS because my research in support of this mission was terminated, as was that of many other scientists. Let's go to the next slide. But in more detail, what do I mean by that? Why would I leave what I think was the best job ever, and why would I do it so early? I had intended to go at least till I was 70, you know, another 5 or 10 years. So what's up here? Click. Part of it was the change in the balance between basic research versus services in the water mission area. The National Research Program had been the crown jewel of federal hydrology science, and it was eliminated. In concert with that, the previously balanced mission, that is balanced between basic research and applied research science services, was refocused entirely onto the latter. Click. In regards to climate, the USGS commitment to hydroclimatology was abandoned. The USGS basically ghosted the collaborative agreement that I put up and that Ram mentioned at the beginning. And climate work, for some reason, was contracted out to NCAR. Click. And then how were all these changes planned? Well, the advice of senior research scientists, I'm not talking about, there were like a couple dozen of us, all found that advice was ignored entirely. And the science plan that was created to do this kind of new focus of work was dictated by the highest level of management in the water mission area, and it was done without peer review. And in my opinion, that shows. So, click. I said some mean things there, so I want to make an important note. Click. USGS water scientists, including the frontline managers and project managers, they remain among the best anywhere. They continue to do excellent science within the bounds that have been dictated as far as constraints. Next. For me, it's just that, you know, given the nature of my work, it was really totally in opposition to these changes. The basic research, it's climate. So I just, you know, those constraints became untenable for me, personally. So next. So, you know, what's going on now in the outside world? Climate change is causing suffering, it's causing death. That's disproportionately harming the people in the world who've contributed least to the change. And there is guaranteed in the pipeline continued change in climate and its consequences. At the same time, the current understanding of hydroclimatic processes is not adequate to support the best hydroclimate change adaptation. I don't know how we're going to do services concerning long-term climate change without doing some more and better science. Click. So, you know, I'm out of there now, but what's next for me? Get some notes here. Once I finish the rehab from my unpleasant hiking accident, it happened right after I quit the USGS. I don't know if that was punishment or what, but you know, I can't, my arm's good, but my fingers are pretty worthless. My writing hand. Anyway, once that gets better, I hope to resume work that had started before my efforts were redirected elsewhere by upper management. This work involves standalone modeling and analyses of existing climate model experiments, left and right here. Next. So on the first front, some preliminary results that we got over a year ago showed an interesting, robust upward trend in evaporation from the Delaware River Basin, driven partially by increasing precipitation, not surprisingly, but also almost as much by increasing atmospheric aridity, drying of the atmosphere. And if we go to the next slide, on another front, Chris and I found a corresponding robust upward trend in evaporation over the whole northeastern US. And this we found both in the observations and in the SPEAR, this is GFDL SPEAR climate model ensembles that were run in Tom Delworth's group, and generously shared with us. So I'm looking forward, going forward, to continuing this analysis and understanding what's going on. Next. So let's see. In conclusion, much has happened in my lifetime so far. Thank you, USGS, for giving me a job. Thanks, GFDL, for letting us come into your space and interact with you. Thank you, all you influencers in my past. Thanks so much to the speakers and attendees. When Kirsten told me there was going to be this event, I was touched. And when she showed me the program and you who were going to speak, I was doubly touched because you're some really special people. And I also want to thank, those who helped make this thing happen. Kirsten, John, Dale Walton in the front office, and Ramaswamy. So thank you, farewell, do some good stuff out there, have fun.